happening right now, and it is a battle to watch. Multiple states and some U.S. cities suing the President of the United States over his executive order ending something called birthright citizenship. Their argument, a person born in the United States is a citizen of the United States, and it's long been protected under the 14th Amendment to the Constitution. So a hearing just got underway moments ago in a Seattle federal courtroom challenging that executive order. So we are watching what happens there. But to go deeper on what is happening in that courtroom and the issue at large, let's go to immigration attorney Margaret Stock. Margaret, I'm also fascinated to get your perspective as a retired U.S. Army lieutenant colonel. What do we expect from that hearing today?
Well, we should hear pretty quickly whether the executive order is going to be paused while the judge considers the legal issues underlying the arguments. So we should know that pretty quickly.
So the arguments get made to
restraining orders.
The arguments get made and it's either paused or it's not. If it's paused, you say restraining orders?
Yeah, they'll issue a temporary restraining order, and then eventually they may issue an injunction and a permanent injunction, and it's likely to be a nationwide or a universal injunction.
You know, when you make an argument that's based on the contents of the 14th Amendment to the Constitution, one would think that you have a pretty strong argument. As somebody who argues these cases and looks at these cases, how are you going to call this at this hour?
I'm calling it for the plaintiffs. The executive order, first of all, it's very badly drafted. It looks like somebody who wasn't an attorney or didn't know anything about constitutional law drafted it. It's very poorly drafted, and the president just doesn't have power to change the Constitution or a constitutional amendment. He never had that power, and the plaintiffs said it pretty well in the complaint. They lay that out. They go, the president doesn't have the power to change the Constitution on his own. He just can't do that. And this has been the law of the land. It's actually been the law of the land since the founding of our country, but it was put in writing in the Constitution in the 14th Amendment.
So what would have to change? What would have to happen to change the 14th Amendment? Because I can imagine if Donald Trump has a loss in court today, like you say, if those restraining orders happen, he's going to want to push against the powers that are holding him back.
Well, he's been claiming he's going to do this to the people that support him, and so he has to feed them something to carry out his promise. But the executive order is not a serious order. It actually doesn't define who's a citizen or not in it. It just gives a couple of examples of people that he thinks aren't citizens. And if you go back and look at the history of this argument, basically, Donald Trump himself is not a citizen under the theory that the folks have of the 14th Amendment. So they're not serious about this because they'd be taking citizenship away from millions of American citizens, including Marco Rubio and Donald Trump and Nikki Haley and a whole bunch of other people. So to me, it's what we used to call in the Army a dog and pony show for people. So
you are a retired U.S. Army Lieutenant Colonel, and so because you also have that expertise, I want to ask you your reaction to the reporting 1,500 troops being sent to the southern border. It could expand to 10,000 troops. As somebody who has sort of that dual perspective of an attorney, an immigration attorney, and also with your history in the Army, and by the way, thank you for your service, what are your thoughts about boosting those troops?
Well, it's going to take a lot of training. People in the Army don't sign up to be border agents. They sign up to do things like be infantry or, be a combat medic or things like that. And so they're just not trained on how to handle border issues. And it's going to take a lot of training and a lot of budget money. And Congress is going to need to come up with the money to support this. And then we're going to need just a huge amount of training for the troops.
Margaret Stock, we appreciate the conversation. Once again, for our viewers who may just be logging on, we are having this conversation while we await the results of multiple U.S. states, some U.S. cities telling Donald Trump, see you in court. Well, that court hearing is happening right now in Seattle. We should hear what happens relative to that birthright citizenship executive order very soon. Margaret, thank you so much for the conversation. We hope to have you back.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me on the show.
So while Donald Trump pushes forward his initiatives, here's what lawmakers who are loyal to him have to say. They say no recess for lawmakers of any sort on Capitol Hill until President Trump gets his cabinet picks confirmed. So that is the promise from those GOP senators at this very hour. So right now, those Republicans are claiming that Democrats are the ones who are trying to slow walk confirmation hearings. Here's Senator John Cornyn talking about what's holding up the confirmation process of, for instance, John Ratcliffe. Let's listen.
Ratcliffe was voted out 14-3, and yet here we are, 30 hours of debate, eating all that clock on
bunch
him.
of wasted time.
What does that portend for moving ahead with a lot of these nominations who are more controversial than Mr. Ratcliffe?
Well, I don't think he's he's controversial at all. He's served, of course, as the Director of National Intelligence before. He's a known quantity. I think he really did a good job in the hearing in front of the Intelligence Committee on which I serve. And I just think this is foot dragging. And it doesn't serve any interest, certainly doesn't serve the interest of the American people to deny the president his cabinet. But he'll be confirmed today.
So just a few steps up from where that conversation happened, let's go live to Torian Small at Capitol Hill. Torian, walk us through some of these procedural hoops. Republicans say this is foot dragging, a bunch of wasted time. What kind of hoops are they wanting to jump through and maybe even trigger?
Yeah, Reed, without that 2/3 majority in the Senate, the minority party, so Democrats here, have the opportunity to delay these proceedings by invoking the filibuster. Now, what we've seen happen since then is Republicans using their right to a cloture vote, which will only require a simple majority to move this forward. What this does is stall. It doesn't necessarily block these confirmations from happening, but it gives Democrats time to, again, voice their concerns about these candidates. Ratcliffe, as Cornyn said, there isn't the most controversial pick that Donald Trump has laid out for his cabinet, but it is one that Democrats are having pause for. The next big one, though, is Pete Hegseth, who is on the docket today as well. He could likely also see himself going through the same process of having his confirmation hearing delayed because Democrats are none too happy with his nomination.
Well, we're hearing about that procedural phase yet again, and something we heard about early on was recess appointments. It's a fast track, no? So what are recess appointments? Just get us back up to speed on what they are, and are they a possibility here?
Probably not, and here's the reason why. Republicans are dead set on pushing through Donald Trump's cabinet picks as quickly as possible. Thune, the majority leader, said that he's willing to have the Senate stay throughout the weekend in order to ensure that happens. Recess appointments usually happen when Congress is out. It gives the president the opportunity to push through. We've seen that defected before in the past because of these things called pro forma sessions. When Congress is out, they would often have a member to come in, to gavel in and out, to prevent the president from utilizing that power. But even if a recess appointment would happen, that would only lead the appointment to have just up until the session for a term in office, so about 1 year's term. That's less than ideal for both parties here, and again, it's not going to happen because Republicans aren't on board with it.
Well, listen, it's Friday Eve, and to the point of burning the midnight oil that Republicans promise, we also know that we are coming up on the end of a week and then looking forward to what's going on next week, confirmation hearings for RFK Jr. What are you looking out there?
Yeah, we're tracking RFK Jr.'s confirmation hearing happening sometime on the 29th. He's facing some pushback from Democrats and Republicans, but mostly from Democrats. I think the concern that we're seeing from Republicans is his past stances on vaccines. There's been quite a few Republicans say he needs to distance himself from some of his previous words, comments, and claims about the efficacy, but then also the danger behind vaccines. But again, Republicans are well in line with Donald Trump's picks for the cabinet. As we heard Cornyn say there, they don't want to deny Trump his picks for his cabinet, so they're looking to push him through, including RFK, as quickly as possible. It is notable, though, that he is on the latter end of this timeline. It looks like they're holding off with some of those more controversial figures to the end, although we already know that Pete Hegseth, who has probably had the biggest shroud of controversy around his confirmation, go first in this process, or at least in the earlier parts of this process.
All right, Torian Small, CBS News political reporter. I just got this from corporate. All of your vacation requests have been canceled. You've got to stay there. There's just too many headlines, my friend. Thank you so much. All right, so let's talk about another major move by President Donald Trump. He spoke at the World Economic Forum in Switzerland earlier today. There's some major people there watching that remote address. He talked to some of the most influential global leaders as part of his first major speech to them with an invite. And here it is: do business in the USA or else. Listen.
My message to every business in the world is very simple. Come make your product in America, and we will give you among the lowest taxes of any nation on earth. We're bringing them down very substantially, even from the original Trump tax cuts. But if you don't make your product in America, which is your prerogative, then very simply you will have to pay a tariff, differing amounts, but a tariff which will direct hundreds of billions of dollars and even trillions of dollars into our treasury to strengthen our economy and pay down debt. Under the Trump administration, there will be no better place on earth to create jobs, build factories, or grow a company than right here in the good old USA.
So let's go live to CBS News senior White House and political correspondent Ed O'Keefe. All right, so Ed, he said the words, "if you don't," which caused me to be sort of struck when the question and answer started to happen there from these global leaders to see that it was a rather warm reception, even though Trump said, "if you don't."
Well, these are business leaders who understand he's negotiating and hasn't implemented any of this yet. He's just making the statements that if you don't, this might happen. The business community has been adjusting certainly to deal with the Trump administration and anticipated this kind of an answer. He's signaled, as he has over the last several weeks, that there are going to be tariffs if other countries aren't willing to cut a deal or be fair to the United States. Mexico and Canada, as early as February 1st. Tariffs against China remain a real possibility, which would certainly upset or affect the most critical global relationship. But the president also signaling that in his first phone call with a world leader to Mohammed bin Salman, the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, that country signaled it's willing to make at least a $600 billion investment, something Trump said he's going to try to get up to about $1 trillion. We'll see if that happens. So look, he's trying to demonstrate in week one that he can talk tough to the world and get things done and get the world and this country more focused on an American-focused manufacturing sector. And if not, they should expect consequences. Channeling what he had been saying all throughout the campaign he would do.
Ed, let's, to your point about that phone call with the Saudi leader, we want to go ahead and let our viewers hear that. Let's go ahead and play.
Saudi Arabia will be investing at least $600 billion in America, but I'll be asking the Crown Prince, who's a fantastic guy, to round it out to around $1 trillion. I think they'll do that because we've been very good to them. And I'm also going to ask Saudi Arabia and OPEC to bring down the cost of oil. You got to bring it down.
All right. So, Ed, how do you feel like that was received?
Hard to read the room, not being there. That is not a plea to send me to Switzerland, but they seemed rather receptive generally to his remarks, and the fact that he made the time at all in this busy week seems to have pleased them. We'll have to wait and see what Saudi Arabia and those OPEC oil-producing countries make of his statement. They don't normally take cues from an American president, no matter who he is, about oil production or the cost of it, and remains to be seen what exactly they say. On the point about Russia and Ukraine, however, he did suggest, quite notably, that he thinks that there will be some kind of an agreement. And he said, quote, "Ukraine is ready to make a deal." That is a stark rhetorical and sort of strategic departure from what the last American president said. Remember, he used to say nothing about Ukraine without Ukraine, which is to suggest I'm not going to speak for them. Today, Trump seemed to suggest that there's a deal to be had because they're ready to. That would be news to the rest of the world, since Ukraine hasn't necessarily signaled it that explicitly. But he also suggested he's eager to speak with Russian President Putin about all this in hopes that they can cut a deal, arguing that if there is one, that too would contribute to lower oil prices and might drive that conflict to an end.
So many fascinating developments and so much to track. Ed O'Keefe, we're glad you're doing it in real time for us. Have a great day. Thank you so much. All right, so let's jump the map now to the western part of the United States. And you see these live images right here on this monitor. That is a new wildfire burning in Southern California. You see that orange line snaking its way up the hill? Right behind it, firefighters, and there they are. They are on that road now doing battle, trying to put out yet another devil of a fire in Southern California. When we come back, we'll let you know exactly where this is and what the prognosis is from a weather standpoint, because you can see there's a trail of smoke, and it's not going up, it's going sideways. You're watching CBS News 24/7. We are watching some breaking news out of Southern California, and here's your headline. Another California wildfire, and again, these flames are burning in the southern part of the state. Look at that. You see the choppers in the sky. They're flying through a lot of smoke, and on the ground, the reason for that smoke, orange flame. So let's let you know where this is. It's burning near the California State University Channel Islands campus. That's in Ventura County. By the way, that campus has been evacuated, and you can see those flames moving up that hillside, leaving a black mark where they've been, and then that orange line there where they are going. So CBS News' Andres Gutierrez, he joins us live in Santa Clarita. Andres, we know that you are at a place where firefighters are staging for yet another fire, but when word spreads now that there's another fire burning, it's got to just be so disheartening for the firefighters where you are.
Absolutely, Reed. It just seems that Southern California can't catch a break. So the images you're watching right now out of Ventura County, that fire burning within the last half hour, the Laguna fire. The Ventura County Fire Department say they are mounting an aggressive attack for that fire that is burning on Laguna Road in the Oxnard Plains. It is fast moving. The conditions out here are ripe. We are in red flag warnings through those conditions through tomorrow morning. It has burned at least 15 acres so far. As you pointed out, the sheriff's office has evacuated that Cal State campus, and right now they are in the process of assessing any other structures that could possibly be in the path of this fire. Winds have started picking up as the day has gone on. Not only are they dealing with that, overnight they had the Sepulveda fire over by the Getty Center in the 405 that burned 40 acres in just a matter of 3 hours. 250 firefighters from the Los Angeles Fire Department were able to put that out on the ground. And also, a lot of the firefighters have gotten help from the air, and that has been great for them. So they've been able to mount attacks from both sides. Here in the Castaic Lake area, the Hughes fire burned over 10,000 acres. It is still burning, 14% containment as of this hour. There, however, has been no damage to structures. So that's been the good news in all this, is that no one has lost a home or a business because of this fire. But a lot of it has to do with the fact that there have been a lot of natural breaks. Interstate 5, which is a huge connector here in California, major corridor, got shut down for a few hours yesterday, but that prevented the fire from jumping over where it would have impacted a ton of folks in those communities.
Wow. And you know, you just have to think about the people who are on the front lines or flying over these fires to try to get them out. They've got to be exhausted. We know that. And now we understand National Guard troops are being added to their numbers. What can you tell us about that? Because we also understand more evacuation orders could happen, and that means moving a lot of people.
So at the height of the Hughes fire, Reed, there were 31,000 people who had to leave their homes. Another 23,000 were on standby. Many of those that were under that warning those warnings have been lifted, and a majority of the 31,000 that left their homes have been able to return in the overnight and early morning hours. Here at the command center at the College of the Canyons, there is the California National Guard that is standing by. They are going to serve as reinforcements to local law enforcement, because a lot of worries for these folks who are leaving the homes are like, well, if I leave my home, is someone going to go ahead and try to make it around the barriers and break into my home? Well, the National Guard is here to make sure that they help out local cops to make sure that does not occur.
Andres Gutierrez, thank you so much. And our thoughts with so many firefighters. This is just more insult to injury as we hear yet again of another California wildfire. You be safe as well. All right, so you hear about those reinforcements, and you know who is a part of that. The culture of reinforcements is our own Jessica Burtz. Jessica, you hear the reinforcement of National Guard going in. This is when it really matters. That training pays off, and you know that firsthand.
Completely. I mean, I'm a part of the California Army National Guard. I fly with them, and every single spring season, we always train with CAL FIRE to get ready for what should be just a summer, maybe fall fire season. You never plan for it to last this long until January, and look at the devastation that it's causing. In live time right now, just near Camarillo, there's wind gusts up to around 50, 60 miles per hour. So I want to dive into that right now. Behind me, you see this. Camarillo currently at 48 mile per hour wind gusts pushing offshore. This is making it so challenging for the boots on the ground, the aircraft in the sky, to contain these fires. And we noticed that 2 weeks ago when the Palisades and Eaton fire started to blow up in size. And we're noticing that now too as these Santa Ana winds stay strong throughout the next couple hours. Now we advance the clock all the way to 7 o'clock tonight. it dies down a little bit, but I mean, you can still see spot fires, especially those long-range spot fires throughout the canyons, throughout these hills, with gusts anywhere up to around 30, 40 miles per hour, and that's still what we're dealing with into the overnight hours tonight. Now, it's important to note that this red flag warning will expire, but it's still lasting into the evening hours tonight, with relative humidity dropping down to around 10%, with wind gusts forecasted anywhere up to around 80 miles per hour just in the Santa Clarita Mountains and all the way down into San Diego County, too. This red flag warning stretches widespread throughout these communities, with high wind warnings in effect, too, until Friday morning. Now, keeping in mind, we do have rain in the forecast for us, but how beneficial really is that? Well, when you expect rain in an area that hasn't seen it in over, 8 months, this could cause mudslides. This could cause a lot of devastation in these communities, too. So we'll keep a close eye on those rainfall totals as Saturday rolls around. That's when we're expecting to see it. For now, I'm going to send it back over to you, Reed.
All right, Jess, thank you so much. Let's go to Texas now. 7 police officers shot in San Antonio responding to a call of a suicide in progress. You see the aftermath there in the investigation. Those bullets flew at an apartment complex where the suspect barricaded himself for hours. On entry, police found that man dead from gunshots. So far, we do not know where that fatal bullet came from, whether it was self-inflicted or in the firefight with police. So let's go live now to Jason Allen in Texas. Jason, what kind of firepower happened to leave 7 officers hit?
Boy, that is a big question right now, Reed, and I'm sure we'll find that out as police still investigate what happened here. The big headline, as you said, 7 officers hurt in this. The good news is none of them died in this shooting. All of them had less than life-threatening injuries, and the Texas Municipal Police Association said none of the injuries are critical. Let's go back to how it started. It's at an apartment complex on the north side of San Antonio. Police saying they got a 911 call that a man may be in a suicidal situation. They got another 911 call then that shooting had started. And when police officers got there, they say a woman ran out of the apartment complex, said that a man was shooting and that he was coming out. And he did come out. Police said he came out, started firing shots, hit the first officer in the leg. They were able to pull him away to safety. And then this sort of repeats itself then into the night. He goes back inside the apartment. A team of officers approaches. Shots are fired. Another officer's hit. They pull somebody to safety. This goes again until we have 7 officers total that are hit. They negotiated with him into the night. Eventually made entry into the apartment, went through the door, the window. There was some gas used. And as you mentioned, found him dead inside. Still not sure if that was a shot that was fired from police who were there or if it was a self-inflicted gunshot wound, Reed.
Well, and oftentimes I've covered these barricade situations, sat them out for hours and watched all of these police tactical moves play out from trying to negotiate to then making entry with those flashbangs or even those smoke devices that they use. But oftentimes police will tell you on those sidelines, we knew a little bit about the guy that was on the inside. Did they?
Yeah, they did. They had come across this guy 5 days ago. His name is Brandon Polis, 46 years old, and he had been arrested. He had a couple of assault charges. There was a DWI charge as well. Police have not said at this point, Reed, if they think that any of that happened last week is connected what happened in the overnight hours. All of that's still under investigation, but this was somebody that they had been involved with fairly recently here.
CBS News correspondent Jason Allen, always great to have you here on CBS News 24/7. Thanks for sharing the airways with us today. All right, when we come back, we're going to be talking and digging in deeper to President Donald Trump's executive orders, sending 1,500 troops, boots on the ground to the southern border. Why that 1,500 could balloon to 10,000 right there at the border towns when we come back. Got some breaking news to bring you following a hearing in a federal courtroom in Seattle. Here's what it's all about, just to sort of bring you up to speed. Several states and some U.S. cities telling Donald Trump, we will see you in court over his executive order as it pertains to birthright citizenship. The attorneys went in before that judge. They argued that this is in violation to the 14th Amendment to the Constitution. So here is what that judge said. The judge said history would be made, blocking that first executive order by Donald Trump as it pertains to birthright citizenship. Now, we had that expert on in the broadcast earlier who said that this would happen based on her expertise, not only as an Army veteran, but also as an immigration attorney. It looks like what she said played out there in that courtroom. So we're still awaiting to hear from President Donald Trump and his administration on what this means, what they will try to do next. But for now, his executive order on birthright citizenship, somebody put their foot in the door, and that somebody was a federal judge. Likely Donald Trump will try to kick this up in the court system. What, our producer's telling me something? Go ahead, Soph. Okay, I'm hearing that the judge issued a blistering criticism. So we'll try to get the text of that criticism and have more on CBS News 24/7. But let's talk about another headline about immigration. CBS News reporter David Schumann spoke with one undocumented woman who says her family feels like they're now in the spotlight. They say they don't have anybody to trust.
20 years in the U.S., and G's parents just started feeling settled enough to decorate their home.
They started painting the walls, they started adding Minnesota stuff. As an immigrant, you still don't fully know what to trust and not to trust.
G's family came here illegally from Mexico when she was a baby. She's now a college graduate, she pays taxes, but she's undocumented, and she only agreed to talk to us if we didn't show her face out of fear for her safety.
I felt like we could hide behind other topics that were in the forefront of politics. Now we're like the focus suddenly.
G's never had an encounter with ICE agents, but she's anxious about who might be working with them. Emails obtained by WCCO show the ICE office in St. Paul reached out to the Sibley County Sheriff in November about meeting to, quote, discuss the benefits of working with ICE for possible housing. Sibley County says it declined the meeting. But ICE does use the jails in Elk River, Albert Lee, and Wilmer to hold detainees.
You know, hearing stuff like that, it's scary.
The sheriffs overseeing those 3 jails declined WCCO's interview requests. The Candy-Ojai County Sheriff said in an email, "Our jail has been providing safe, secure housing for ICE detainees for over 22 years. ICE inspects our facility 4 times a year and holds us to a higher standard of care than the Minnesota Department of Corrections." No law enforcement agencies in Minnesota have the authority to act as immigration officers. Even so, G says her undocumented status is always somewhere in the back of her mind.
The weight of it feels really exhausting. You can feel yourself be sensationalized because I'm not that different from other people here.
David Schumann reporting. So let's think about this. President Donald Trump telling global economic leaders at the World Economic Forum about these dramatic changes in his push for more troops at the border. He says active duty U.S. military and National Guard troops are on their way there right now to enforce a strict crackdown on immigration. He also said, quote, to not allow our territory to be violated, close quote. Our correspondents tackling this story from all angles. So CBS News senior national security correspondent Charlie Daggett reporting live from the Pentagon right now. Charlie, we're talking about 1,500 troops on their way there, but also, Charlie, we're hearing that that number could be multiplied up to 10,000.
Yeah, we have been told in no uncertain terms that that number will be multiplied. We had a background briefing yesterday. That just give you some background on who exactly is going. So 1,000 Army personnel are already starting to go there. I checked this morning. Some of them are already on the way. They're sort of positioning themselves in Camp Bliss and El Paso in Texas, and then also in San Diego. In addition to that, there are 500 Marines. They were already had their go bags packed because they were on standby just in case they were called in to help with the California wildfires. So they were already in a sort of go mode. They will be sent out to San Diego. It's been pointed out to me, though, this is not that they've been pulled away from that duty. They were never called to duty. They were ready to go. So they're not taking Marines from fire duty into border duty. They simply had their bags packed and were ready to go. But yes, this is just the beginning of what we're expecting to see. That has been drilled into us. And I know that number 10,000 is out there. They wanted to walk that back slightly, but this is just the beginning. 1,500 now, also joining 2,500 who are already there and have been for a number of years in Texas.
Charlie, I want to ask you a question that comes out of a conversation we had minutes ago here on CBS News 24/7 with somebody who has sort of an interesting perspective. She's an immigration attorney, but she's also a former U.S. Army corporal. And she says that these soldiers are not immigration officers and that before they can be effective there at the border, they have to have a whole bunch of training. Anything there at the Pentagon relative to training? I mean, these people, as you say, they were at the ready to go, grab their bags and fight fire. How can they go into this very specialized sort of approach there at the U.S.-Mexico border?
Reese, it's an important question, okay? Because we tend to get this idea, certainly I do, and I work inside this building. We get the idea that you just pick up a phone and call in the cavalry, right? You have to get people who are specialized to do what they're tasked to do. And nowhere else is that drilled down more than it is here with the military. You just don't send personnel into an area. So as we understand it, they are going in support of Department of Homeland Security. It's being driven by Northcom, which is a sort of the same way you hear CENTCOM. Northcom will be providing all the logistics. So at the moment, they are there in support. They're not sort of guarding the border. They've been told that they might have to put up temporary structures, so building up a border wall. They'll be helping with transport, logistics. But in terms of enforcement, that genuinely isn't the case yet. And I say yet because it's something that they're going to have to tackle, because you may have heard it before. I'm reading it because my Latin is a bit off. Posse comitatus, which prohibits National Guardsmen or any active service members from being involved in law enforcement, because that's where it blurs the line.
Right.
Is the defense of a border considered law enforcement? They're going to have to figure that out. It's not that that act hasn't been put on hold before. It's been done 30 times since it was enacted in 18-something or other. Most recently in the 1992 riots in L.A. when there was an insurgency. So you can enact active duty troops in a, quote, law enforcement environment, but that's a decision that needs to be made from the very top.
Right, and that guest that we had on also said that a lot of these troops are likely to see this as and these are her words, but a dog and pony show. Are you getting any sense there at the Pentagon that if they can't go in and really act as ICE agents or DEA, they're just there in support roles, that this also has a dual purpose by the administration to show the world that Donald Trump means business on this issue?
Well, Reese, in the conversations that I've had here, off the record and on background, there is a reason that the Trump administration has deployed the troops. And as the Pentagon has made patently clear for the past number of days, they are here to serve the commander-in-chief under constitutional norms. So they're going to be supplying everything they can in terms of resources. But yes, this is a show of force, right? The Trump administration wants to see the U.S. military, U.S. uniforms on the border. It's also, and there might be something in this, as a deterrent, right? If we suddenly, as it was termed to me, militarize the border, and you're trying to get in and you see, a racked up U.S. military there with a high presence. I mean, it would be a similar sort of deployment in a conflict zone that I'm more used to. When you militarize a place, you do have a high profile. That's the way they operate. It's also worth noting, by the way, there's going to be aircraft up, right? There's going to be armored personnel carriers. This is going to look like a defended area, for lack of a better word.
National security correspondent Charlie D'Agata, thank you so much. We appreciate those words because we know Donald Trump calls immigration issues a national security issue. Thank you so much. All right, when we come back on CBS News 24/7, we're going to go deeper on that breaking news that happened during this broadcast. What happened in that federal courtroom in Seattle? A federal judge blocking birthright citizenship executive order by Donald Trump. Arguably one of the first losses Donald Trump has seen in his very large cadre of executive orders. More on that when we come back. A stinging defeat for President Donald Trump, where his executive order relative to birthright citizenship is concerned. Listen, a lot of U.S. states took him to court. In fact, some cities in the United States also joining in on that. And they met in a federal courtroom before U.S. District Judge John C. Cowner. They argued that birthright citizenship is protected by the 14th Amendment of the Constitution. And here's your headline. That judge sided with the plaintiffs. And we just want to read to you what is coming to us right now at CBS, a blistering criticism. The judge saying, I've been on the bench for 4 decades. I can't remember anything that presents as clear as this. This is blatantly unconstitutional. So the judge announced that he will sign that TRO immediately after the state has finished its rebuttal. He then instantly got up and departed the courtroom saying, it just boggles my mind. CBS News correspondent Adam Yamaguchi is live at the U.S.-Mexico border in San Diego, California, where likely this news is spreading. Adam, we're hearing right now about this news out of that federal courtroom as it relates to birthright citizenship. No doubt the people who are gathered there at that border will be glad to hear at least some progress for their perspective.
Absolutely, but there is definitely a chill in the air as legal migrants or as migrants waiting on the Mexican side of the wall here are nervously anticipating what may come down. What we know here on the ground, at least, is that CBS News has obtained an internal CBP memo that says that up to 10,000 federal troops would be authorized to come to the southwestern border to secure it and to tame what President Trump calls an invasion at the southern border. What we know so far is that 1,500 Marines and soldiers have received their orders to come out to the border, and what they're primarily going to be doing, at least initially, is to help Customs and Border Protection agents secure by putting down some concertina wire to buttress the borders or the barriers here at the border wall. There are a number of areas where people are able to sort of circumvent the wall. This is a very rugged terrain here. So there are areas of the wall that sort of just end and give way to the landscape. And so the idea is, again, to sort of plug some of those potential holes where illegal entries have been taking place.
All right, so as to those entries, we also understand that the Trump administration planned to use the Department of Defense bases to hold migrants who are awaiting deportation. What can you tell us about the plans to hold those who are detained?
Right, so that was also mentioned in the internal memo that we obtained. There are also plans potentially to have the agents assist in the detention of some of those migrants, but we do know that the DoD is going to have a very limited purview in terms of what else they can do. There is longstanding federal law that prevents these troops from being able to engage in the enforcement of some of these federal laws. That could, of course, change with an executive order.
Adam Yamaguchi, thank you so much for that live report there at the California-Mexico border. And I just have to use this opportunity, speaking about a whole other story. You know, we're following California wildfires, and we often talk about the wind. You can hear the wind in your report. So for people watching at home there at the border, and you're thinking about California and the firefighters, you're also on a whole other note and a whole other topic, seeing how strong those winds are in California for firefighters as well. Just another object where stories intersect there. Adam Yamaguchi, thank you so much for that. Hey, we have some breaking news out of our nation's capital as it relates to Pete Hegseth. Moments ago, a break in the ranks, so to speak. Republican Senator Lisa Murkowski says she will vote no for Pete Hegseth as Defense Secretary. We've got her statement here. It says in part, and here it is on your screen, I remain concerned about the message that confirming Mr. Hegseth sends to women currently serving and those aspiring to join. Women have served our nation with distinction, overcoming immense obstacles to excel in combat and leadership roles, and they, she says, deserve to know that their leader honors and values their commitment to our nation. Close quote. Senator Murkowski saying she's a no vote, a no-go for Pete Hegseth as Defense Secretary. Of course, we are watching reaction from the Trump administration and from Capitol Hill. Keep in mind, the margins just got a lot thinner for Pete Hegseth, and we're going to start to look at that math and see what it spells out for his future in that very important role, leading many, many of our nation's finest. We'll be back in just a minute.
Well, as we laid out today, so we moved for a temporary restraining order, which has a nationwide impact. The next step will be a preliminary injunction, which will allow for more thorough briefing. The TRO that was issued today has a 14-day effective date. So for 14 days, the United States government can take no further action implementing or enforcing this order. But we will be back in court, as will many other people across the country.
Attorney General, can you talk about, because this order would expire before well, according to the government, before the executive order would actually take effect, why was this needed now? What are the immediate harms that are happening today?
Well, there are two principally for the states. I mean, the states would have to start working on the potential impact of that effective date now. We can't simply wait for 30 days to prepare for all of the changes that would happen to state government to recreate and re-implement these systems that are having dire financial and administrative impact on the states. But more broadly, this is about people. This is about people who the President of the United States was trying to deny their lawful right to be citizens. And babies are being born today, tomorrow, every day, all across this country. And so we had to act now to provide back to the status quo, back what has been the law of the land for generations, that you are an American citizen if you were born on American soil, period. Nothing that the President can do will change that.
And that was the argument that just went inside that federal courtroom in Seattle from one of many attorneys general, that one from Washington State. A once again temporary restraining order signed blocking President Donald Trump's executive order as it pertains to birthright citizenship. But let's bring our guest right back in. Immigration attorney Margaret Stock. Margaret, you called this one. You said that this is what would happen. But I have to really zero in. The word temporary on that restraining order. What makes it not temporary, and what kind of a timeline are they facing now?
Well, this is normal. You always get 14 days on a TRO, temporary restraining order. And now they're going to get an injunction, probably a temporary injunction, and then they'll get a permanent injunction. As the judge called it, it's a blatantly unconstitutional executive order. The president has no power to change the Constitution. He knows that. It's surprising to me that a couple minutes after he took an oath to uphold the Constitution and laws of the United States, he decided to issue an unconstitutional EO. But, this is what he promised people he would do. So I guess, the judge had to do the judge's job and issue a TRO. That's how things work in America. We go to the courts and we get them enjoined. And just as a note, the first Trump administration, this was standard practice that he would issue on illegal orders and people would have to go into court and get injunctions. So it's just a repeat of the first term.
All right, and arguably the first defeat where his executive orders are concerned. So do you have any sense that he is going to make an argument to change the 14th Amendment to the Constitution? This is somebody who doesn't like to be told no.
Well, he thinks he can interpret the Constitution and change the meaning of the Constitution with an executive order. And we've never had that in America. Presidents don't have that power. That would make him a king instead of a president. He's supposed to faithfully execute the Constitution and the laws, not throw them out with executive orders. So, it puzzles me that his staff would go along with this and let him do it. But, hey, that's the way things are apparently today.
To our viewers who are just logging on, we're having a conversation about what happened inside that federal courtroom in Seattle. A judge signing a temporary restraining order against President Donald Trump's executive order on birthright citizenship. That judge saying this is blatantly unconstitutional, and then walking out of the court said, it just boggles my mind. CBS News 24/7 will continue following these developments. Let's keep in mind that this loss is happening while the president is now sending 1,500 troops to the U.S.-Mexico border. Much more on these developments on CBS News 24/7.